Hey everybody, my name is Lorraine Kamesha. If you're watching this, you recognize what I'm doing right now because I do this every morning. I come out, get my morning walk on with my baby, and I share some content that I would like to discuss with my audience. Sorry for my breathlessness. I just started running up the hill this week, but I just ran across a video on TikTok that I would like to give my commentary on. I'm going to let it play, but first I want to give a little background. It's a woman that I follow on TikTok. She's very informative, and she's talking about, having children in a capitalist society. So I'm going to let that play, and then on the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about it, okay? It's a bit long, so make sure you stick around to the end because that's where the juicy part is going to come in.
Anyone who says that women are choosing not to have children because feminism has gone too far are so wrong. It's not that, it's capitalism. I'm probably going to get muted for talking about this because it's like a complete 180 from my normal content, but here we go. For context, I'm 38 years old. I do not have children, but I am in a long-term relationship with a man. And throughout my formative years, I always believed that I would eventually become a parent, but as I'm getting older, I realize I don't know if this is for me. And it is because of capitalism. Please let me explain. This is a very simplified version, but I can expand on it if you want me to. Number one, giving birth. The act of giving birth in a hospital or healthcare setting is very expensive. A lot of people cannot afford private hospitals, which is fine. We do have a public system here in Australia that's pretty good, but we also know that it is incredibly underfunded and has been for years. And this is just on the assumption that the baby will be born without any health complications. If the baby is born with any health complications, that's a whole raft of other costs you have to worry about. Add on top of this all of the equipment and things that you apparently need for a baby. All of it adds up. It's a big cost. Problem number two, the reproductive freedom argument. Now, I live in Australia where we have fairly okay abortion laws in this country, but we've all been watching what's been happening in America and elsewhere and don't think that women aren't paying attention. Just because it's not happening here yet doesn't mean that it won't happen in the future. Because governors, politicians, etc., they don't truly care about the welfare of these young babies. What they care about is bringing more children into the world who will eventually grow up to be tax-paying adults. And birthing parents are getting these messages. They see this talk all the time. And it's like, well, what all that's telling me is that my body and the trauma that I will go through to give birth to the child doesn't matter to anybody. I'm simply just a vessel to help governments prop up their population growth. And that's not even taking into account the cycle of forcing people in a disadvantaged situation to give birth. And then what happens to those children when they have to grow up and then take on jobs and responsibilities because they're disadvantaged. Problem number three, the cost of childcare and the effect on superannuation. So let's assume you do have a healthy baby. Lucky you bring it home. Someone has to care for it. Our societal infrastructure is still very much based on the 50s model of a two-parent household where one parent would work full-time and the other parent would stay home full-time. But that's not viable for young couples anymore. It's 2023. We're literally in a cost of living crisis. Both parents need to work these days. I know for certain my partner and I both have decent jobs that we could not survive on one person's income. So you have to send the child to childcare eventually, but we know childcare is exorbitantly expensive, not because the childcare workers are demanding a higher pay, but because of corporate greed. So a lot of the time, one of the parents has to stay home because it's cheaper for them to just care full time rather than try and go back to work and pay for childcare. So if I'm taking up to 4 or 5 years out of the workforce, that is significantly impacting my superannuation. And because of the inflation rates being out of control and wages not meeting them, the estimated amount that someone my age, or like Gen Y, millennial, the estimated amount of money we need to have in superannuation to retire comfortably at the age of 67 is $3 million. I know I'm definitely not on track for that, and my superannuation is pretty good. Problem number four, climate change. We all know that capitalism is the driving force behind the climate emergency we found ourselves in. And it doesn't really matter what side of the climate change argument you want to fall on. The fact of the matter is, capitalism is built on the idea that we need to always chase growth and profit every single year, sell more, buy more, make more. The world we live in has finite resources and eventually they're going to run out. We're already seeing some of the effects of the climate crisis in like the population of certain species of animals and communities being displaced. This is only going to get worse unless huge changes are made. And at this point, I feel like so many governments, my own included, make a lot of promises, but we all know they fall so drastically short of any sort of significant change. And when we talk about the climate catastrophes that are like awaiting us, we're not talking about things happening in like 100, 200 years time. We're talking about things that are going to be felt in like 15 to 20 years time. Why would any responsible birthing parent who thinks about these sorts of things want to bring a child into that sort of world? So if you want to sit back and just blame feminism and selfish women for not wanting to have babies, please take a moment and think about it. If you want to see more women wanting to have children, well then you have a responsibility, and I mean everyone has a responsibility to create a world that is more, appropriate for that child. If you want to see more women genuinely want to have children, then you need to help create a world that supports her to do that.
Okay, so now that you've watched the video, let's discuss it, okay? As a mother of 3 with, a recent newborn, she's 1.5 years old, I'm going to give my take on this and my experiences. So the first point that she makes is that it is incredibly expensive to have a baby with hospital costs. She's not even in the United States. She's in Australia, and the United States has one of the worst healthcare systems when it comes to costs in the world. Just for a normal, uncomplicated birth, you are looking at tens of thousands of dollars. And if you don't have insurance, you are going to be in for a nightmare. My first birth was a set of twins almost 12 years ago. They're 11 years old now, and they were born prematurely at 33 weeks. Due to negligence on the hospital's part, I ended up having one baby naturally, so vaginally, and then the other baby by emergency C-section. So basically what happened is they kept me in a room too long because I was pregnant with multiples. It's already considered high risk. So I was supposed to be wheeled into an operating room just in case anything happened. So I told the nurses at the time that I needed to push, or I felt like I needed to push. And they told me, oh no, we just checked you. You're not going to have these babies for another at least 12 hours or so. Well, I kept telling them that I needed to push, and they kept insisting that I didn't, until the doctor came in, and I told the doctor how I was feeling, and he checked me, and I went from being like 4 centimeters all the way to like 9, almost 10 centimeters in literally an hour. Now this is an emergency situation. They're rushing around, getting me to the operating room. By the time I got to the operating room, I barely pushed and baby A was out. And 20 minutes later, they were concerned that I wasn't feeling any contractions or that nothing was progressing. They did an ultrasound and realized that the baby's cord was prolapsed, which means that the cord was coming out before the baby, which means, decreased oxygen supply, which is very dangerous for the baby. I just ran up the hill again. Bear with me, I just ran up that hill again. So a total of 5 weeks in the NICU after a very complicated birth leads to a humongous bill. And then with my youngest, everything seemed to be, going well, aside from the fact that now, because of the emergency C-section I had, I'm now forced to have a C-section every time I give birth because of the way they had to cut me. Everything went fairly well until after the birth. I had a specialist come in and say that they felt something could be wrong with the baby's heart, and they wanted to run this test just to check and make sure. Normally no concern, but we just want to make sure that the baby's okay. And of course, as very concerned parents, wanting the best for our baby, we allowed them to do this test, which added another $9,000 to the hospital bill, which they did not tell us about up front. And of course, everything turned out to be perfectly normal. So we ended up spending probably about $8,000 out of pocket before we met our deductible or whatever, you have to spend before they start covering healthcare costs. And then we end up spending another $6,000 or $7,000 after we got out of the hospital. So a total of about $16,000, $17,000 just for the birth of one child. And that's the part that the insurance did not cover. Who can really afford that? You know what I'm saying? Without any type of assistance at all. Having a baby in this country is insane, the amount that it costs out of pocket, especially when there's other countries that you can consider that are getting more time off, more benefits. There are actually some countries that are paying their citizens to have children. So moving on to problem number 2, she talks about the issues with reproductive rights for women. Now again, she's in Australia and she makes that known. And there's no secret about the issues that we've been having in the US, in this country, about reproductive rights. Some of the stuff is absolutely insane. If you weren't already scared to get pregnant, you probably should be at this point, because the things that are happening around us are criminal, I would say. Case right now somewhere in Texas where a woman is suing the state government because they forced her to have or birth a baby that they already knew was not going to be viable. Failed to give her any proper medical knowledge or any type of. They already knew what was going to happen, and they purposely did not tell her because they did not want her to be able to make a choice for her own good, basically. So now she's suing. So they hid her medical situation from her to force her to make a decision, or just basically took her decision away altogether about what she should do in her unique situation, and forced her to have a child. A child that they knew already was not going to survive, which also put her life at risk, as well. One of the craziest things to me is the fact that I can't just go into any doctor's office and decide that I don't want to have kids for my own benefit, for my own future, without male consent, whether I'm married or not. And as she mentions in the video, like, this stuff is not happening where she's at, but they're watching because they realize that their countries are set up on the same capitalistic ideas by the same people, led by the same demographic, white male, as our country is. And she recognizes that they don't give a damn about our health. They don't give a damn about how we're going to take care of these kids. The only thing that they care about is producing more workers for their systems, because they know that these children will eventually, the majority of them, will end up working for them in the future. And that should make anybody take pause when it comes to thinking about, are they going to have kids? How many kids are they going to have if they do, and how they're going to provide for those kids? Because let's be honest, the government is not really doing much for us in this sense. So moving on to problem number 3, and this one is a big doozy for most parents. And that is childcare. Who the hell is going to take care of all these babies? Okay? In a world where inflation is just insane, prices are constantly going up. The cost of living is crazy. The wages are not meeting the increase of products and the cost of living. Who the hell is going to take care of these kids? Now, I've talked about this on my channel a lot because I'm a single mom right now, and it costs me $900 a week for in-house childcare for my 3 daughters. That means before I can even get up to make my wages, I have an expense of $900. Most couples in this country are forced to have one or the other partner stay at home because it's just so expensive for childcare. And I'm trying to figure out why we only talk about it as if the woman's wages is included in childcare. I hear this all the time where mom is like, well, I would be spending most of my paycheck just for childcare alone. Why is mama's paycheck only the one considered? Because at the end of the day, well, mama is not in, work mode. She's not practicing her career. She's losing out on a lot when it comes to retirement. She talks about in the video of how every person needs at least $3 million to retire at retirement age, to be able to care for themselves after they retire. And I can only imagine that in this country, keep in mind she's in Australia, it's probably got to be more because, we have very little care when it comes to elderly care. There's systems, but they suck. And that's why I mainly work with women, moms specifically, when it comes to helping them create side hustles for themselves, because you need some form of income coming in, period. I get a lot of flack for saying that being a stay-at-home mom is not a privilege. It's a financial partnership that you go into with your spouse or your significant other that allows them to go to work without having to think about childcare, home care, cooking, cleaning, all that type of stuff. So it's a partnership. It's not a privilege for mom to stay home, neglect her career, not work, not contribute to her own retirement. And it's very risky. You need to have something to fall back on and tucked away for yourself. And that's why, I created 50 side hustle ideas for moms who want to work from home, because you need something. And if you'd like to take a look at that, take a look at the link in this description. It'll give you a bunch of ideas that you can do while you're at home with the kids. So hopefully one day you're bringing in full-time income passively instead of having to go out and work a 9-to-5 and figure out the whole childcare issue. One of these ideas made me a 6-figure earner by year 2. And now, I have money that's just coming in residually pretty much. So I'm able to take care of myself and my kids. And I honestly have more choices when it comes to partners and situations that I'd rather not be in, if you know what I mean. I talked about on this channel before how I started my business way back in 2013, because I was literally just trying to make enough money, which was $140 a week at the time, to keep my kids in daycare because I had went back to pharmacy school. And that's cheap. Those prices are no longer the same. I can promise you that. So I fell back on something that I was already doing. And then I learned how to outsource and automate tasks. And I went from working full time to about, 5 to 10 hours a week just on that side hustle specifically. At this point, I have a bunch of different side hustles that are running in the background, even as we speak. But that one that I created first was due to needs for childcare. That side hustle is still paying my bills to this day. So on point 4, she talks about climate change. Now, this is not one that was really on my radar, and not saying that I don't give a damn about climate change, because it's definitely a thing that's affecting all of us. It's that I really never considered it as a part of the decision to have children. But now that she makes that point, I see it. Regardless of what side you stand on when it comes to climate change. Like, there's people who believe in it, people who don't believe it, people who believe it's a thing, people who believe it's all a crock of shit. The insurance companies in this company definitely believe in it. Let's go take a look at areas like Florida and California now, where they're refusing to insure people and they're dropping people left and right, and the prices are insane. Now, I'm not going to spend much time talking about the climate change issue because her points are very valid there. And I would like to add one point of my own that I think that all people should consider, especially in this country when it comes to remaining child-free or not. And that's gun violence. Gun violence. That is a huge issue right now that is being driven by capitalism. Now, I don't care where you live at in this country, what socioeconomic background you're from, what race you are. Gun violence is something that has touched literally everybody in this country. And I promise you, there's somebody that's been affected by it. I mean, right now, I live in a good part of town, and I have an Airbnb property that I have that's in the inner city of where I live. And there's literally no difference between the notifications I get on my little Ring neighborhood watch thing every single day. There's reports every day of gunshots being heard in the suburbs where I live, and also in the inner city where my property is located. Every day there's notifications about break-ins into people's cars and homes and guns being stolen. A couple of months ago, I believe it was, in a very affluent part of Nashville, Tennessee, at a very prestigious and exclusive private school, they had a school shooting. So it really doesn't matter what your background is at this point. You're going to be affected by it in some way, form, or fashion. Yet the gun laws keep getting more and more relaxed. Isn't that weird? Not if you think about who's making money off of these sales, the manufacturers and the politicians in this country. It's not really weird at all. It definitely makes sense why they wouldn't want to put more laws on gun control, or at least try to protect our children a little bit more. I realized that after they moved from the rural, low income parts of town with the gun violence, and they started getting into the exclusive private schools, and they still didn't do anything about it, that they probably pretty much were not going to do anything about it. At this point, it's affecting their kids and not just the people of color and the poor, and there still have been no solutions to slow it down, let alone stop it. So this is definitely something that goes into my mind when I think about having more kids. I can understand why people at this point are, contemplating being child-free. And it's, again, not feminism. It's basic human, decency. It's basic math. 1 + 1 is not equaling 2. The math ain't mathing. And it's become a huge burden on citizens to bring children into this world. But I don't see anything changing if we don't start talking about this and we don't start doing something about it. And unfortunately, I think that this generation is ready to just quietly quit, mind you, because they're removing themselves from these types of systems. They're refusing to bring children into this world where people don't care and, changes are not being made. What do you think about this lady's videos? What are some reasons that you can think of that people are being child-free? Leave your, thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting more content like this and reveal more videos. If you have any videos that you would like for me to give my commentary on, leave the link to the TikTok in the comments, or you can email it to Lorraine Kamesha at gmail.com. Thanks.